I'm Bob Marshall, been married to my wife Kathy since 1976. On and off, we've been involved in public affairs, politics. We both worked for Congressman Bob Dornan, B1 Bob of Southern California. She was a caseworker. I was a senior legislative assistant. Prior to that, I had worked for a Democrat member of Congress, a conservative fellow, DFL, Democrat farm labor guy, was in the OSS in World War II. I was a clerk of a public works subcommittee, and I also was a legislative assistant for him. Then I went over, after I worked for Bob Dornan, and was a staff director of a Senate subcommittee for POW Jeremiah Denton. So I grew up in Washington, met President Truman when I was a kid, worked for Jack Kennedy in the 1960 race, watched the Democratic Convention from front to finish in 1972 and concluded I was not on the same planet with these people. And at that point, I decided I could no longer call myself a Democrat. I didn't call myself anything for a long time. I voted for independent candidates for president and such. And first Republican I voted for was Ronald Reagan. I was the chairman of the Coles Republican Supervisor District in Prince William County. And that's the first time that had gone for a Republican. Actually, Kathy and I, if somebody wants to go back and look at the records, back to 1980, they'll say, well, Bob Marshall, you didn't vote in 1980. That's true. Why? Because when Kathy and I were driving home, we got home, we lived in Occoquan Forest, we got a phone call about 10 minutes later. Our boss, Bob Dornan, said, there are 2 tickets on an airplane at Dulles Airport. I want you over there in about 3 hours. He was in a very tough race with the son of Gregory Peck running against him. We literally didn't even have time to eat, obviously couldn't get absentee ballots, drove over to the airport, left our car there and flew out to Santa Monica to help Bob Dornan in the last days of the race, and it was indeed very close. So that's why we did that. But the real reason that Bob Dornan was excited was not so much for his own election, it was because of Jeremiah Denton, the POW. And Bob Dornan he invented the POW bracelet, and so I had some familiarity with that. I met Charlie Wilson when we were helping the Mujahideen, so-called, in Afghanistan with Stinger missiles, blowing everything up, and I wondered where this was going in the long run. I now see where it is going, or has gone. So I decided to, I actually didn't decide to run for office. I looked for somebody else to run for office in the legislature here. When I couldn't find another victim, I talked to my wife. Actually, I talked to 5 people because there was a new seat opening up in Prince William County. I tried to find somebody who was conservative with experience, had the opportunity to run, and couldn't do it. So I talked to Kathy, said we can't find anybody. We said some prayers. She said, okay, we'll go ahead and do it. And we largely relied upon right-to-lifers and homeschool folks to go door to door for us. And we won. We were vastly outspent. The Democrats pretended at that time that they voted for me. I don't know that I believe that necessarily, because I won that first race, and that was drawn for a former assistant to the Democrat, one of the Democrat delegates. Won the second race, third race, fourth, fifth, so on. I've been outspent as much as 4-1. My district has swung between Barack Obama and Bob McDonald. So I can tell you truthfully, I win in a swing district in Northern Virginia. Now that's not something that every Republican can do. So there's an advantage there to doing that. People ask a question. They want to know, can you beat Tim Kaine? It's almost like the first question that comes out, and I say, well, I think I can. They say, why? I say, well, I've already beat him, and let me explain what I'm talking about. Tim Kaine was the governor. He proposed amendments to a bill, House Bill 3202, which if the bill wasn't unconstitutional before he did that, it clearly was unconstitutional after he did that. What did this do? He amended this bill, and the local speaker here was pushing it, to have unelected taxing authorities in Northern Virginia and Tidewater. Each of these unelected bodies was purportedly authorized to impose 7 taxes. Taxes on fixing cars, hotel rooms, you know, when you sleep. That's the Democrat tax, the occupancy tax, the tax you for sleeping. A tax on home sales, inspection of cars, just a whole bunch of things. Car rentals, same thing down in Tidewater. Kathy and I went to this meeting where these people just all raised their hand, including Jerry Conley, who was sitting up there like a Cheshire cat, just deciding that he would impose these taxes, wasn't elected at all to this board. And they were kind of making fun, like I'm Don Quixote. I said, okay. So I got $100,000, sued Tim Kaine, the Speaker, the Republican Attorney General, and everybody else in my Rolodex in Northern Virginia that I could find, and who was on this defense here on the board. I won this lawsuit and beat Tim Kaine. The guy announcing the decision was Tim Kaine's handpicked appointee to the Supreme Court. So that's one for Bob Marshall. Number two, in 2003, I saw this Lawrence v. Texas decision come out from the Supreme Court. Wrote an op-ed for the Richmond Times, decided at that point I was going to make it hard for the folks who think two guys can marry each other to gain any traction in Virginia. The next year, I got a law passed over Mark Warner's objection. Oh, by the way, I've overrun governors, not overrun, overridden them 4 times. I don't know if anybody else certainly nobody in the last 20 years has done it. I don't think anybody in the last 100 years has done it except myself. So I got a law passed, says we're not going to recognize out-of-state civil unions. That was the prelude to the marriage amendment, which you all probably voted for in 2006. Tim Kaine opposed the marriage amendment. You, the people of Virginia, approved the marriage amendment with about 153 or 54,000 more votes than Jim Webb got, beating George Allen. I had gone to George Allen's wife and said, you need to get on this marriage amendment. But the Republican consultants, not being very interested in social issues, decided to avoid that. So again, I beat Tim Kaine on that. Late in 2009, I decided to devise a bill to put a federal issue in Virginia's legislature. What was that? Obamacare. I devised the Health Care Freedom Act. And when you see Ken Cuccinelli's lawsuit against Kathleen Sebelius, he cites the Health Care Freedom Act as the grounds of standing, which he uses to sue the federal government. Who's the chief cheerleader for Obamacare? Tim Kaine. So when Tim Kaine was leaving, that's 3. When Tim Kaine was leaving office, his Social Service Board decided to impose regulations, about 2 or 3 sentences in about 265 pages, so I didn't catch this right away, which would have required Catholic and Christian adoption agencies to place children with homosexual couples. These regulations have shut down Catholic charities in Massachusetts, the District of Columbia, and Illinois, and any other traditional family-oriented, Ten Commandments-based adoption agency. Tim Kaine's a Catholic. He proposed regulation to shut down the adoption function of his own church, which had gone on for 2,000 years. Now, I find this very curious. I exposed these regulations, got the attention of the Attorney General, the Governor, folks like yourself, perhaps, if you're on my email list, and we beat him. The first day that Tim Kaine is governor, so that's 4. First day that Tim Kaine is governor, he issues Executive Order number 1. What was that? On his own, he decided that he could change the state's hiring code so that people, what he says is sexual orientation, it's really behavior, can be employed by the state of Virginia, and you can't discriminate against people on these grounds. Well, only the legislature can do this. So I wrote to Bob McDonnell, then Attorney General, and said, did Tim Kaine have the ability to do this, the power, the legal authority to do it? Bob McDonnell, 6 weeks later, said no. So, 5, okay? Now, 2 where Tim Kaine beat me, but where he's lost, in fact. In the 2006 special session, I got a bill. He was giving away the Dulles Toll Road to pay for the construction of Metro. That's my bookie, probably, but I'm not going to. I'm not going to pay him. I'm taking a firm stand on this. He decided to give away the toll road. Now, he could have received $500 to $600 million from an Australian consortium over a term of years. The money could have been used to build the Metro. He didn't receive a dime. He gave the toll road away to the MWA, the Metropolitan Washington Airport Authority. I fought this. I pointed out that the GAO gave a scathing review of their contracting practices, highly critical of their sole source performance, their closed bids, things like this. As a result, there's huge overruns up there. I got a bill passed the House of Delegates. Says you can't give this toll road away. It went to the state Senate. He gets Pierce Homer, Secretary of Transportation, to lobby against it. My bill goes down. But he loses and the people lose because there's massive overruns on this thing. At the same time he did that, he appointed Mame Riley to the board of MWA. Who's Mame Riley? The campaign manager for Mark Warner, yes, another Democrat. That's why you had labor unions coming in where they hadn't come in before. I'm not per se against labor unions, but they do charge more money normally. That has resulted in a project labor agreement up there. The cost escalation has gone through the roof. He beat me kind of on that one. Though another one where I asked him to step in was whenever you buy gas, you see up to 10%, maybe 15% at times will wreck your car's warranty. Ethanol is being added to the gasoline. The law that Congress passed actually allows states to petition EPA to get out of this thing. So either the legislature or the governor can say, EPA, get us out of this. I pointed out to the governor how you all are paying more for food because food's being burned, literally. And that kind of grain alcohol burns cooler. It's a cool flame. It's not a hot flame like gasoline. As a result, you get less miles per gallon when you have that in your car. I asked him to reverse on that. He didn't do that. So I guess I lost that one, but you're the losers. And when I remind people that Tim Kaine is part of the reason why you're paying more for food, and I fought him, they may remember me. Now, I think I've gone over my 10 minutes, or I'll stop right there, and you can give me the questions, and I'll pass the hard ones on to my wife. So, folks, democracy is not a spectator sport. On the put in the marble or the granite up there on the archives building is the following phrase: eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. This is true no matter where you go in government. You've got to watch those to whom authority has been given. You've got to watch their track record to make sure that the change you put on them in the form of the Constitution stays there and doesn't become just morphed around day by day. Now, I have kept that compact. I have not veered from that. I have challenged my own Republican leadership. I refuse to go along with efforts to make it harder for you to see what we do in subcommittee, and for that, I was stripped of 2 subcommittee chairmanships. Okay. I can go to sleep at night. I couldn't have slept at night if I thought, well, they really don't know what's going on, and we won't tell them. That's not government. That's mayhem. I am not for that. And believe me, I need your support to do this. I think I can challenge Tim Kaine, whereas others can't. He's a Catholic, I'm a Catholic. These moral issues are going to be coming up. And you've got to have someone who can challenge him on his own grounds. Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan could challenge each other because they both were Irish. And they did. And they got along. But we're now facing somebody in Washington for whom power knows no limits. Somebody's got to stand up and put the chains on this guy before he puts them on us. I don't mind getting in fights. I was at a rough high school. I took self-defense lessons from a bodyguard to Chiang Kai-shek. I've been in gunfights without a gun, not an enviable position to be in. But the fights that I've been in Richmond are for you. And they don't need physical force, but they need to have steel, firm determination, and a goal. The goal that I have is the restoration of what the founders had for this country. The moral law that hasn't changed and will not change is my guide. And if I go to Washington, you can be sure that I will do the same thing up there as I will down here. And if it annoys the living you-know-what out of the Republican leadership, let them take antacid tablets. I'm there for you, not there for them, because I want my name, when I face my maker, I don't want to have him say, I gave you all these opportunities and talents, and you wimped out because you were afraid. Mitch McConnell was scowling at you. That's not going to happen, at least if I get there. So I'd appreciate your support. If you can help me collect petitions, please do so. We have instructions back here. We've got these comments that I have from the press. These aren't my statements. This is what the press said about me. So I think I can go head-to-head with Tim Kaine, and especially with Obama, trying to shut down Christian and Catholic hospitals and forcing them to pass out abortion pills or birth control in violation of their moral code. Ronald Reagan was the most successful politician of the 20th century. He dealt with social issues and economic issues. I did medical research for 25 years. I am not afraid of these social issues. I can wrap them around Tim Kaine's neck and intend to do it if you assist me. So thank you very much.